Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is a secondary lesson. Today we're going to talk about some listening, speaking, writing, and this is from your book, The Traveler 3. So if we get started with what we will learn today, the objectives are three, as you can see. One, practice listening to check predictions about famous persons. And number two, practice speaking about the topic of the module, which is, the module we're talking about is heroes. And three, understand the organization and content of an essay describing a person. So we're going to listen to something and answer the questions. And number two, we're going to try to practice speaking about heroes. And number three, we're going to have some kind of writing in how how to describe a person. So if you take a look at this picture, I'm sure you all know this comedian, this character. If I asked you who is he, you could say that this is Mr. Bean. And is he a famous person? Yes, he is. He's a very famous person for his, comedies on TVs and series and also some movies. And what is he famous for? He's very famous for, as we said, his moves and his style in comedy, which is a little bit more silent. So this is a very famous person. So if we want to describe people, there are some words and phrases that we use to describe people. You can see this woman, this man, and this girl, and this boy, and this dog, and this little baby. So each one of them could be fat, thin, happy, sad, sick, whatever. So let's learn some words to use to describe people, like the first word, courageous, extraordinary, responsible, stress, unselfish, enthusiasm, patient, sense of humor, and strict. So let's find out their meanings. Courageous, which exactly means brave. Someone who's courageous means brave. Number two, enthusiasm. It means intense and eager for enjoyment. Extraordinary means very unusual or remarkable. Patient, it means able to accept or tolerate problems. Responsible means having control over someone or something. Then sense of humor means the ability to create new humor. And unselfish, it means willing to put the needs of others before one's own. And finally, strict means firm or hard. So if we talk about courageous, which means brave, we can say Khalid Moulid was a very courageous leader. It means he was a very brave leader. Number two, enthusiasm, and it means when you have you can say, I feel too much enthusiasm for the football match between Hilal and Nasr today. So you're very excited. You feel too much enthusiasm. And for extraordinary, the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is the little word extra. So you can say the weather today is extraordinary. It means very beautiful. And patient, someone who is cold and able to accept and tolerate. So when you say patient, it means someone who is tolerant. So you can say, actually, also the word patient comes from people who stay in a hospital. So if you stay in a hospital, you're a patient. But here it means you are tolerant. It means you tolerate. For example, we know that Ayub is a very famous name, or maybe a prophet who was very known for his patience. Responsible, someone who's responsible, he feels responsibility. So you can say students need to be responsible for their education. And sense of humor, someone who really, most of the time can make people, funny, someone who has the talent to tell a joke, someone who has really, some kind of a gift when he speaks and he talks or makes some moves. So you can say, let's say our English teacher has a very nice sense of humor. it means he's funny. Stress. Many students feel stress before the test. So many students feel, stress, or they feel stress before an exam. And finally, unselfish. Someone who's, unselfish, which is the opposite of selfish. So you can say, she thinks about all people. She is unselfish person. And finally, strict. Someone who's firm or hard, like, teachers need to be firm inside the classroom and check students' homework. So let's move now to some listening. I'm going to introduce to you three very famous scientists. The first one is Fleming, and he is, famous for his penicillin. And then we have Pasteur, which is a very famous also chemist and mathematician. And finally, Röntgen, who is also, well known for, his invention for the X-ray. So if I ask you, you're going to hear a radio presenter talking about three important scientists. We're going to listen and compare the information given with the answers in the previous activity. So these are very famous, three scientists. They actually have added a lot of inventions which have improved our life. So let's hear about them. So you're going to hear about the three important scientists. You're going to listen and complete the sentences. Write F for Fleming, P for Pasteur, and an R for Röntgen. So number one, who was born in France? F, Fleming, P, Pasteur, or 3, Röntgen. So we have 3 people now. We need to put F for Fleming, P for Pasteur, and R for Röntgen. So who was born in France? Okay, so before you listen, it's good to hear. 2, who had a brother who was a doctor. 3, who studied math, physics, and chemistry, and who came from a poor family. Who discovered the world's first antibiotic, and who was born in 1845, and finally, who was awarded a Nobel Prize in physics. Okay, so we need to go here, and I'm going to play for you this text, and I'm going to go with you on this text. While you listen, I'm going to play for you the listening, so you need to follow with me. Okay, so I'm going to read, because this is a radio presenter talking to a man. His name is John. Tony, welcome to the show. So it's a show. Now, let's try to
2A. Listening and speaking. Listening. B. You are going to hear a radio presenter talking about 3 important scientists. Listen and compare the information given with your answers in the previous activity.
Welcome to the show. Today we are going to talk about 3 famous scientists and how they have changed the world. With me here in the studio is John Maxwell, who is going to tell us more about the topic.
Good evening.
So John, tell us, who are we going to talk about today?
First comes Alexander Fleming. He was born on the 6th of August 1881.
In Scotland, right?
That's right. He was an extremely good student, but also very poor. However, at the age of 20, he inherited some money from an uncle. His older brother Tom, who was a doctor, encouraged him to follow the same career.
What happened next?
Well, he became an excellent surgeon, and in the First World War, he worked in a hospital in France healing wounded people. When he returned home, he discovered something that would change medicine.
Penicillin.
Exactly. The world's first antibiotic, which has saved and is still saving millions of people around the world. In 1945, he received the Nobel Prize in Medicine, along with 2 other scientists.
Right. Let's move on to Louis Pasteur.
Of course. Louis Pasteur was born in France on the 27th of December 1822. He studied mathematical sciences and was a professor of physics and chemistry at the University of Strasbourg.
Now,
So as you heard, that was Pasteur. Now we will try to complete.
He worked in a hospital in France healing wounded people. When he returned home, he discovered something that would change medicine.
Penicillin.
Exactly. The world's first antibiotic, which has saved and is still saving millions of people around the world. In 1945, he received the Nobel Prize in Medicine, along with 2 other scientists.
Right. Let's move on to Louis Pasteur.
Of course. Louis Pasteur was born in France on the 27th of December 1822. He studied mathematical sciences and was a professor of physics and chemistry at the University of Strasbourg.
Now, Pasteur discovered many things during his lifetime. What do you think is the most important contribution?
If I had...
So we'll continue right from here, okay?
The world's first antibiotic, 45, 7th of December 1822. He studied mathematical sciences
During his lifetime. What do you think is the most important
at the University of Strasbourg.
Now, Pasteur discovered many things during his lifetime. What do you think is the most important contribution?
If I had to choose, I'd say his work on pasteurizing milk.
Can you explain this process to our listeners?
Of course. Pasteur showed how germs can spoil food like milk. So he invented a simple way to kill those germs. One way to do that was to heat milk in order to kill the bacteria.
A great scientist. Who is next?
Wilhelm Röntgen, the German physicist. He was born on the 27th of March, 1845. He studied in Zurich as a mechanical engineer.
What was his most important work?
This extraordinary man is responsible for a form of radiation called X-rays.
An amazing step in medicine.
Yes. Actually, the very first X-ray was that of his wife's hand.
It must have been an amazing experience.
Indeed. Röntgen received a Nobel Prize in Physics in 1901 and gave the money from the prize to the university. He died in 1923, leaving behind an achievement that we still use today.
Well, we've had a look at 3 different, very important scientists and their greatest achievements. I think we can all agree that their work changed the world forever.
So as you just heard, let's go back and answer these questions. Number 1, who was born in France? Of course, it's P. Pasteur or Pasteur in French. And number 2, who had a brother who was a doctor? Fleming, Pasteur, or Röntgen? It's Fleming. Fleming has a brother who was a doctor. And number 3, who studied math, physics, and chemistry? It was Pasteur. He studied math, physics, and chemistry. Number 4, who came from a poor family? It was Fleming, according to what we heard. It was Fleming. And number 5, who discovered the world's first antibiotic? So number 5, Fleming. Also, he discovered the world's first antibiotic was penicillin. And number 6, who was born in 1845? It was Röntgen. And finally, who was awarded a Nobel Prize in Physics? It was Fleming. So they go like, 1P, 2F, 3P, 4 Fleming, 5 Fleming, Röntgen for 6, and for 7 we have also Fleming. So if we move on now to something a little bit more exciting after the listening, let's try to speak. If you take a look at this picture, this is a teacher standing from 6:30 a.m. until afternoon, trying to teach his students, and his students are listening to him. That is the first picture. So we're always trying to describe people. In the second picture, you have a firefighter risking his life trying to put out some fire on a roof or something. So if I want to describe pictures or describe the people in these pictures, so look at these pictures and discuss the following questions. You can use some of the words and phrases in the box. So in the box we have the word courageous, we talked about it, pressure, responsible, rescue, unselfish, patient, risk, danger, career, deal with, rewarding, and stress. So the question, do you consider these people heroes? You remember we still talk about heroes? Why and why not? Some people say teachers are heroes because they are, responsible, unselfish, patient, and they deal with different students, and their rewarding is, inshallah, in maybe heaven and in life, and sometimes they have some stress. So we consider them real heroes. So in number two, in your opinion, are they rewarded for what they do, and how do you think they feel? I think for me personally as a teacher, I feel responsible, and I feel rewarded with seeing my students grow up, become different, or work for different careers. Some of them become doctors, officers, maybe also teachers. And if we talk about this fireman or the firefighter here, he is courageous, he's very brave, his work is full of pressure, and he rescues people. He's unselfish. He could put himself to a risk to save other people. His work is full of danger, and also he deals with fire, and also sometimes he gets some stress. So firefighters are real heroes. We unfortunately have lost too many firefighters doing their job, trying to rescue people, and maybe lost their life just to save others. So if I have some more sample answers for you here, teachers, I think teachers are real heroes. They have to look after and teach their students to be patient and caring or loving. And as for the firefighters, they enter burning buildings to rescue people without thinking about the danger their job involves. I know I could never be a firefighter. I would be too scared. Someone said, no, I disagree. I think I would like the excitement and also the feeling that I have saved a person's life. It's a very great, rewarding feeling. If we also now move on to talk about writing, and before we start to talk about writing, we know that writing needs practice. So the more you practice and learn from your mistake, the more your writing will be better. So when you are writing a description of a person you like or you admire, follow the outline below. So we have 3 steps to follow when we write a descriptive writing. So when we talk about people, when we describe people, so we need to write about them. Now we learned some vocabulary about describing people, and then we spoke about describing people, and now we're going to write the best way to describe people. So always you start with an introduction. In the introduction, you give some general information about the person you're going to talk about or you admire. In number 2, you have the main part or the body, and it could be 2 paragraphs. In the first one, you describe a person's character, and number 2, you say what influence the person has had on you or other people. And finally, number 3, in the conclusion or in the final step or final paragraph, you make a general comment about the person and say how you feel about him or how you feel about her. So again, in the introduction, you give some information. So if I want to talk about someone that I admire a lot, I could talk about our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so we can say he is the messenger of Allah, and he is known to the whole world. He was a leader, and he brought a heavenly message from God to people to save their lives. And for number 2, this was some general information. And you can say Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born in Mecca, and his father, and you talk about his mother. So once you actually mention the name of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the whole world knows him. Now, if we go to the second part, the body of your essay or your paragraph, it should start with, you could have 2 paragraphs. The first one, you describe his character. He was patient, he was loving, he was caring, he was a good father, and he was also actually very lovable person for or very loved by others. And also in another paragraph you say what influence the person had on you or other people. He changed my life, he changed people's life, or too many people's life. We got like a billion and a half million billion people around the world. So he changed whole life by bringing Islam to our life, and Islam goes in every detail in our life. Conclusion. Finally, make a general comment. Muhammad ﷺ was the best creature that God ever made or sent to us. His character is a model for every man, and his sunnah, or what we do as a prophet way, has come in every detail our life. So our life could be fair, lovable, easy, and we think also about the afterlife, and that everything you do in life will be rewarded, inshallah, in afterlife. So you have this question in your test most of the time. Now write, okay? Now write a description of a person you like the most or you admire the most. Say why you admire this person and how he or she has influenced you, and roughly you need to write between 100 to 150 words. Let's take a sample of writing, all right? So the person I admire, this is the introduction, and you're going to give some general information. The person I admire most is my secondary school English teacher, Mr. Nabil. So you give some information. He taught me in my final years, and before him, I had no interest in English. However, when I finished school, it was my favorite subject. Now, move to two paragraphs, which are the main paragraphs, and we call them the body. Mr. Nabil was a serious, you're describing him, and quiet and quite strict, but he also had a wonderful sense of humor. The thing I really remember about him is his enthusiasm for the subject. This rubbed off on nearly all his students because he motivated them to become interested too. As for myself, now we're going to the second part, what influence he had on you. As for myself, Mr. Nabil had a lasting effect on me. He was the main reason I chose to continue my studies in English. He helped me choose the best university for what I wanted to study. He also made me believe in myself, and now I'm confident that one day I will fulfill my dream of becoming a teacher. And finally, just general comment, I will never forget Mr. Nabil. I'm glad that he still teaches at my old school, and I hope that students he teaches now appreciate him as much as I did. So we had introduction, two paragraphs in the middle, and finally a conclusion. So let's remember, what did we do today, or what we learned today. Actually, the words and the phrases that we learned today, we use them to describe people. We say, this man is courageous, he's brave. This football match is full of enthusiasm. This is an extraordinary weather outside. He's a very patient person. Teachers are responsible in their job, and Mr. Bean has a great sense of humor. Students usually feel stressed before their exams. All prophets were very unselfish people. They don't think about themselves, they think for others. And finally, strict. Teachers need to be strict about students' homework. And when we describe people in speaking, we need to write about them. So we can write about them following three major steps, which are going for the introduction, when you give some general information about the person you admire, so you write about him or her. Two, the main part, which is two paragraphs, as we have read about Mr. Nabil, the teacher, describe the person's character. He was strict, okay, but he has a sense of humor. And also what influenced Mr. Nabil has on you or other people. He's changed his life. He did not like English before, but Mr. Nabil made him like English, so he continued his studies, and English has become his favorite subject because of Mr. Nabil, and this guy also liked to be a teacher. And in a conclusion, we just made a general comment about the person we were talking about. So these are the references and the resources where you can go check them if you want some extra activity. And finally, for more information and lessons, you can follow us on, you can go to the website, follow us on Twitter, and this is a 24/7 number. Until I see you again, enjoy your time, and Assalamu alaikum.